Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast, episode 1049. My interview with John Lukens, and we're discussing his favourite topic, brain immunology. Enjoy. Hey, John, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All the way from, whereabouts are you?
University of Virginia, which is in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah, about 8:30 in the evening there, huh?
Yep.
Nice. And how's your day? Been busy, I imagine?
Yeah, busy day.
So, mate, you're obviously doing a lot of things there at the moment, but for those listening out there, give us a little brief as to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm an associate professor in the Department of Neuroscience at University of Virginia, and we're broadly interested in how the immune system, so this is the system in our body that protects us against infections and also helps to make sure that our tissues heal after injuries, and also helps to remove potentially dangerous substances like protein aggregates in the case of Alzheimer's disease. Anything involving that immune response that's generated and how it affects our brain. So we look at it both in the case of how it helps to regulate a healthy brain function, and then also when it goes wrong, how it causes disease.
Okay. That's pretty high-tech sort of stuff. So you're a neuroscientist?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I'm in a neuroscience department and they pay the bills, but I'm an immunologist by training. The center that they developed here is kind of unique in that they brought together neuroscientists and immunologists and all put them in the same area of the building, and we share equipment and everything to really force interaction and collaboration, and kind of helps to create some checks and balances to make sure that both sides of this interdisciplinary research has rigorous components to it.
Can you explain for us the key differences there between immunologists and neuroscientists?
Yeah, so immunology in a lot of ways there's different cell types, there's different signaling pathways. There's a focus on the mounting of the immune response, whereas in the nervous system and neurology, they're predominantly, at least for decades, there's been most of the emphasis on how do neurons work, how do they store our memories, how do they regulate our movements, how are they contributing to our emotions. And it was thought, for decades that the immune system and the nervous system were completely separated, and there wasn't very much
interaction,
I guess. Yeah. And when the thought was, when there is interaction or the immune system does get activated in the brain, that would have damaging consequences. So that's, over the last, 5 to 15 years, we've figured out that's not necessarily the case all the time.
Right. So why has this, this connection between the two come apparent and more, I guess, relevant, like your field of work now, which you call like brain immunology, I suppose?
Yeah.
Does that come about because of Alzheimer's and things like that, more so that we've realized there's the connection, or?
Yeah, no, there's been a couple factors that have led to it. The one is, we've gotten so much better at screening for mutations in people, and understanding, the genetic components of diseases. And if you take Alzheimer's disease as an example, within the last 10 years or so, we've come to know that many of the genes that have risk factors for AD are associated with the immune cell of the brain, which is the microglia. And this was missed leading up to this because we just didn't have that depth of understanding. And another big reason why there's this interface now is we did think that, so most organs in our body have these draining pathways that basically take things from that organ and present them to the immune response so they can become activated or not. And it was generally thought that the brain didn't have these lymphatic draining vessels. And as a result, it was kind of cut off from the immune system. And I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, they actually discovered that the brain does have these lymphatic draining vessels, and there could be this communication with which kind of like the epicenter of the immune response. And the reason that we missed it for so many years is it sits right above the brain, right under the skull. And most of the times when we were doing autopsies or any kind of, high-tech imaging to look for them, people were just pulling off the skull and throwing it away in the trash. And it wasn't until Yoni Kipnis and others discovered that they were there that kind of like revolutionized the idea of this.
What is this draining system you're talking about? Like,
yeah,
what does that look like? I mean, I'm just trying to visualize something like that, but
so they're vessels, kind of like our blood vessels.
Right.
But they're different kind of vessels, and they're hooked up to all of our organs, and most organs will drain to one area known as a lymph node, and that's where a lot of your immune cells kind of hang out. And they're basically surveying for different antigens or different things that would activate the immune system.
So the purpose of that lymphatic system is to detect things that are good and bad.
Yeah. So it's really surveying what's going on in that organ.
Yeah.
And providing a little bit of a separation to ensure that if you do trigger the immune response, that it was going to be for the right reason. And then, those immune cells can traffic into that organ now that they know something is happening there. They've had that. Yeah.
And so the brain has a similar thing.
Yeah. And we just overlooked it for,
So when was this discovered?
Yeah, I think it was 2015 or 2016. It was discovered actually by two groups. So the first person that published it was Yoni Kipnis. He made the discovery here at University of Virginia. And then there was another group in Scandinavia that followed up, and it's become a really hot area and active area. It's been shown that with aging, this drainage pathway deteriorates pretty quickly, and it looks like that impairment in its drainage pathway causes the buildup of things that lead to dementia and neuronal loss, things like amyloid beta and tauopathy. So we've shown that in brain injury, even mild head injuries can mess up this drainage pathway and cause inflammation due to the buildup of neurotoxic or things that neurons don't like and cause an unhealthy environment.
Is that only the brain lymphatic sort of system then? Do you call it a lymphatic system in the brain, or?
Yeah, so there's one for the spinal cord too. And the spinal cord one, obviously is involved in everything from spinal cord injury to there hasn't been any work with it in ALS, but that would be a really cool future area of study.
Okay.
So you call some people call it the CNS lymphatics or the central nervous system lymphatics. So the CNS includes both the brain and the spinal cord. If you're talking about the brain lymphatics, some people refer to them either as the meningeal or the dural lymphatics, because that's that thin little membranous layer right under the skull where they live.
Wow. Okay. So when you're talking about immunology and the study there, you're talking about, your study, is it looking at how to improve our immune system to therefore fight long-term deterioration and things like that, so we can better protect ourselves? Or
it's kind of figuring out how we can harness the immune system to potentially ward off or potentially make the brain environment healthier. and we do that by trying to boost this lymphatic drainage. And that's more at a kind of a systems level.
What do you mean by boost the lymphatic system?
So there are some growth factors that we and others are using that cause the lymphatics to grow in diameter and size. So in the instance of aging, when for whatever reason we don't understand why they kind of fall off the cliff and become unfunctional, but we can actually boost those lymphatics by we inject this growth factor into that area. The lymphatic is almost like a plumber coming in, and if there's a kink in a pipe and you're not getting as much fluid going through, they put in almost new pipe around it to open that hole up more so things can flow better.
Right.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting too, because typically brain tumors are really hard to treat. And part of the reason is, we can't really trigger the immune system. And there was a group out of Yale that showed that if you boost the lymphatic drainage and you enhance this communication between the brain and the immune system, that some of those cancer therapies that exist that target the immune system become much more potent.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about in reverse as far as, looking after our organs or our brain? What can we do in that sense to help that lymphatic system or drainage?
Yeah. So the big ones appear to be a big environmental risk factor for deterioration of the function of this drainage pathway is brain injury. So that's work that we're doing. And, even a mild head injury can cause a long-lasting impact on this drainage function. The other thing is sleep appears to disrupt this drainage pathway. So if you have fragmented sleep, you can have issues there. We're still kind of learning all of the conditions that impact it in a good and bad way. It's with only been a discovery within the last 5 or 6 years. But in head injury and sleep appear to be two things that can really impinge on its function.
So no high impact sports then, not a good idea. And everyone's telling us right now to get better rest.
Yeah. It's I guess with, the head injury and avoiding some sports, I mean, it would be right now. It's so arbitrary when we tell people they can go back and play football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, or, hockey or whatever. But it would be good if, we could do some functional studies and say okay, your lymphatics have recovered. It's good for this, you're healthy to go back, as opposed to just, kind of blindly, telling them, it's been a couple days, you can get back out there.
How would you measure something like that? I mean, can we do it for any of the other organs, measuring the quality of our lymphatic system?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. So there's been some imaging where you can kind of look for morphological changes in that structure. And that's not perfect, but it does give you insight into functionality. And then the other option is you can inject tracer into what's called the cerebral spinal fluid. So this is the fluid that kind of circulates our brain and drains out of this lymphatic vessel. And you can inject it in there. When you get a spinal tap, you're accessing the CSF. And then what you can do is you can do an aspirate, so pull a little bit from your lymph nodes that drain the brain, and you can just ask how much of that tracer that you'd originally put in can you pull back and pull out, and that gives you some insight into the functionality and efficacy of the lymphatics. These are still early technologies. There's probably other technologies out there that people are working on, but I think if it became part of general screening, it could be really valuable, both for aging and, other neurodegenerative diseases.
So what is the Lukens laboratory? That's the project that you've set up, is it?
Yeah, so we're looking at the lymphatic drainage post-traumatic brain injury.
So of the brain?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In particular? Okay. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, and then so we're trying to rescue the head trauma induced alterations in this drainage pathway. And what we showed is if you have a mild head injury, the lymphatics are functionally disrupted for at least 2 months post injury. And then using some tricks, what we asked is, okay, what happens if you have a pre-existing impairment in this drainage pathway and then you get a hit to the head? So we were able to do that experimentally to induce a functional impairment, and then we hit them. And what we found is when you have this pre-existing impairment, it results in much more inflammation, much more loss of tissue, and cognitive issues. And that kind of gives us some insight of why like repetitive head injury is so bad. If you get hit again and your lymphatics haven't rebounded, that would be problematic. And then the other component that we've focused on is, as I mentioned before, aging. You have this massive deterioration of your lymphatic drainage, and what we were able to show is if you boost that drainage function before an injury occurs in the elderly, you can make the recovery almost like a young person. So it definitely could be explaining why head injuries in the elderly are so devastating.
Right.
Yeah.
So where do you hope, through this research you're doing, what are you guys ultimately hoping to achieve?
Our dream would be to figure out strategies to help people that are suffering from, head injuries and concussions. And, it's such a misunderstood brain issue, but it can seriously impact people's lives. We think of CTE, which has, been in the media quite a bit with professional athletes.
What's CTE?
CTE. And this is when you have a lot of tau pathology developing in your brain. There's a bunch of famous American football players that have succumbed to it in I guess the media, and there's actually evidence that it's occurring in soccer or football players too. But
is this a brain injury? Is it?
Yeah, it's kind of it's not an acute thing. It develops over time,
right.
And it causes everything from personality changes to risk taking to all types of psychoses that can be pretty devastating and scary. Yeah.
What discoveries have you guys made that I guess you could share with us to make us think about how we live our day-to-day lives? Are there any things along those lines?
In terms of the traumatic brain injury front, or
just in regards, in your field of work, in regards to our immune system and neurology, are there any things we can particularly do or learn from what you've found in day-to-day lives? You sort of touched on sleep before, and things like that.
Yeah. So, another big component of our lab is also looking at the microbiome. So all the organisms that live in our gut and our skin, and we actually showed. Another component of our lab is looking at inflammation during pregnancy and how that inflammation alters the developing brain. And there's been multiple labs in addition to ours showing that if if you get above a certain threshold in immune activation during pregnancy, that can alter the developing fetus brain. And at least in experimental mouse models, they have autistic-like behaviors. And what we showed is if you can modulate the maternal microbiome, it can change that immune response that happens. In our case, we were looking at it in terms of a viral infection-induced immune response. So we another thing that you could think about as a way to shape the impact on your human health could be targeting the microbiome. And it's interesting. There's been other studies within our field showing that the microbiome plays a role in Parkinson's disease. And this has been a theory that's been around for a long, long time. But so thinking as gut health and the major, it's interesting. Our guts are kind of our barometers for how we're living, whether that's the food that we're putting in our bodies that can change your gut flora. You're in a matter of days, pretty strongly. Things like stress. And that your gut and the microbiome there is really educating your immune system and calibrating it. So thinking in those lines too could impact very.
It'll be also affecting the immune system. So if you've got a poor gut microbiome, then your immune system is going to weaken, will it? I mean,
or be inflammatory or just dysfunctional, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of so you can do these studies where you either have a mouse that doesn't have any microbiome, or they call it a wildling. So this is a mouse from the environment, that lives outside. Same genetic background. The only thing different is the microbiome. And you induce, say, like a viral infection. In both of those mice, the mouse that doesn't have a microbiome, the immune system just goes crazy because it's never learned how to put the brakes on to turn it off, and you get a lot of morbidity and mortality with that. Whereas the wildling that has had this education, this calibration of the immune system, knows how to turn it on and off efficiently. You wouldn't even know they were infected.
It's interesting, isn't it? So what from that study, I mean, maybe you don't go into it at this level, but how do we influence that gut microbiome as far as making it better, other than knowing a good, healthy diet, things like that? But do you look into that sort of thing? Or?
Yeah, that's kind of like the $1 million question, right? It's like, we like big picture, we know that composition can have an impact, but there's trillions of bugs in there, and each bug is making different metabolites. And so what a lot of people are trying to do is trying to find what specific bugs can confer that effect on your immune system, or what they're making, the actual metabolite that they make that kind of alters the immune system. And you almost have to think of it as personalized medicine, because everybody has different guts and microbiomes, and we could get to a point where it would be different in different people, how we try to help with whatever disease that they do have.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all connecting anyway, all these fields of research by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of fun in that sense where, at least in the, this new ideas of the immune system and the gut microbiome influencing brain health is, it hasn't been around that long. And it's kind of cool going to these meetings and seeing people from microbiology that, think about different bacteria that live in our guts, and hardcore immunologists, and then, people that, are interested in how neurons work, all kind of come together to tackle the problems. Yeah.
So brain health, pretty important sort of topic nowadays, it seems. And it seems like everyone's on this anti-aging mission, and certainly it seems as we get older, our brain starts to become a bit more of a problem.
Yeah. And we don't have a good handle on that, at least in terms of how the brain works, and how the brain ages. It's quite clear that you get more and more immune activation as you do age. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of how we can help people. It's we don't have very many drugs to treat neurological diseases. Multiple sclerosis we do, and that targets the immune system. There's a couple others, but if you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, ALS, you'll be given treatments, but they're not really targeting what's causing the disease. So I think there's a real dire need to get at this sooner rather than later. Yeah. Especially as we live longer.
And you haven't progressed there.
Yeah.
In your research, it seems like it's having some level of progress.
Yeah. I think in the field, I think one of the big steps forward for the field has been accepting the idea that the immune system is involved in almost every neurological disorder. And the immune system is a little bit easier to target than, say, a neuron. Neurons, they're post-mitotic, which means unlike many other cells in our bodies, when you lose them, they don't return. You don't have a new one coming in to replace it. The immune system it regenerates over a couple days. So, you can, you have a little bit more flexibility there. It's easier to get to too, in the sense that our brains have these like kind of fortresses around them called the blood-brain barrier. And it's tough to get things through that. So some of the drugs that we have, are just kind of stopped there, in the circulation where our immune cells live. It's a lot easier to target them.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So how can people find out more about your work there?
Yeah. So we have a lab website. It's www.lukenslab.com, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm also on. Whoops, sorry about that.
No, you go. You're on Twitter.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter, and I try to post papers quite often, and there's a lot of good science content coming out on Twitter. I think it's pretty fun to see people engage, both in the community, like in the research community, but also in the public with some of those stories that come out.
Yeah, well, as I said to you post-interview, it's kind of over my head. So having these sort of conversations, at least to build some awareness around it and a bit more understanding too. Of how everything's connected. Yeah,
I think to give people some hope. I mean, I can draw like a couple parallels to things that have happened in the past. So 20 years ago, when I started grad school, there was this whole idea of like cancer immunology, like how can we harness the immune system to fight cancer in our own bodies? And this was like a crazy idea at the time. Nobody, you would go to a cancer meeting and there would be these cancer immunology talks and nobody would go to them. Immunology, the same thing. It was this kind of like this bastard field for a long time. And then, there were a lot of people that kept on pushing it. And I guess within the last couple of years, we have drugs, new lines of cancer drugs that boost the immune system and that are, saving people's lives. And, some of the first people that pioneered that won Nobel Prizes. So, while I'm sure, and I'm frustrated too, that we don't have treatments for a lot of these neurological diseases, I think there's a lot to be hopeful for, because things like the immune system and the microbiome now has a seat at the table. It's going to take some time, but I think people should be hopeful because it's kind of been not studied in the realm of a lot of neurological diseases until recently. So,
but you look at ways you can boost that immune system, right, with certain drugs, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But I mean, are we also looking at the field of how we can naturally boost our immune system through, better sleep and routines and things like that? I mean, that's got all that study, doesn't it? Because if you can boost your immune system naturally and have a stronger immune system, obviously that's going to fight off disease and aging.
Yeah. And that's probably a safer way. It's the microbiome is a very safe way for a mother that's pregnant to limit their inflammation. There is quite a bit of evidence that things like exercise will change your microbiome. Nobody's done the studies yet, but looking at how exercises affects brain lymphatic function, I think would be a really interesting study. And then exercise has a really strong impact on the immune system too. So,
lots of different areas to go into there. That sounds it.
Yeah.
Mate, thanks for coming on today. It's certainly evening there now. I can see that it's gone from light to dark out your window. And but we appreciate your time coming on. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime. I had a fun time. I had a blast.
Thank you. I'll stick the link in the show notes, guys, so you can check out the Lukens Laboratory there at thehiddenwhy.com. And until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Thanks, guys, for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I hope you love what you're hearing. If you like this episode, guys, or any of the episodes that you're listening to here at The Hidden Why, please do me a favor by sharing it. You can share it with your families. You can share it with your loved ones. You can do that by using your favorite social media channels, using the icons on the platform that you're listening to The Hidden Why podcast. Also, guys, if you're a fan of the show, please connect with me. Connect with me at thehiddenwhy.com. I love to hear from you. I love to converse with the people that listen to this show to find out what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and perhaps if they have any questions or feedback for the show as well. You can stay up to date with all that I'm releasing here, guys. I do a solo show every Monday, a 3-minute thought every Thursday. I do 2 interviews a week on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and a book review every Friday. You can stay up to date with all that by subscribing to my newsletter at thehiddenwhy.com. Just enter your email address there, and also subscribing to the podcast on the platform that you choose to listen to your podcasts. You can also support the show, guys, by using the Amazon links at thehiddenwhy.com. So if you like books, you can get all the books that I review there, and anything else really that you like to purchase through Amazon. So use that link, it helps support the show. And we've also got a deal with Audible, guys. Audible is a fantastic way to listen to all your favorite books. We've got a deal with them so you can get 2 free books when you subscribe subscribe to a 30-day free trial. So check that out again at thehiddenwhy.com. Guys, that's it from me. You know what to do. Go out there, breathe more passion into every single moment. Do everything with greater purpose, and in doing so you will discover your hidden why. This is The Hidden Why. My name is Lee Marnuzzi. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.